In traditional Pokemon games, most players stick to moves with 100% accuracy instead of risking stronger but unreliable options. For example, why use Dragon Rush, which is only 70% accurate, when you can just use Dragon Claw? However, accuracy is no longer a thing in Pokemon Legends CA, and the combat system has been completely reworked. So I'm going to go over 10 types of moves that are better in Pokemon Legends ZA than in the mainline games. And just so we're clear, this list considers both the casual use and the competitive side of how a move is used. To start off our list, we have trapping moves. This includes moves like Fire Spin, Whirlpool, and Sand Tomb. These moves don't actually have a very high base power, but they now scale with the user's stats, instead of doing a percentage of HP every turn. This means these moves will now do a lot more damage, especially if we use the plus version of it, which makes the area of effect even bigger, do more damage, and last longer. These moves are very useful during Mega Raid battles, and can do super effective damage, leading to a lot of damage over time. However, these moves are very easy to avoid if you're not an NPC, but can be useful when an opponent is trying to bait you. Now this next category is actually just two moves, Thunderbolt and Psychic. Both are very good high damage moves in the mainline games, but in Pokemon Legends ZA, I feel like you can slap them onto any Pokemon and they will just do good, especially Thunderbolt. These two moves are special because they are both sure hit moves. No matter how far away, as long as you can lock onto an opponent, these moves will connect, making these moves very versatile. If you play the online ranked battles, you see plenty of Pokemon just carrying Thunderbolt to counter Gyarados or other flying Pokemon. Next, we have moves that would usually nerf you pretty hard in the mainline games after being used. Outrage is a perfect example. It's a high damage move, but will leave you confused after using it. However, being confused in this game isn't that big of a deal. Your Pokemon can't even hurt themselves anymore when confused. Leaf Storm also falls under this category as it lowers their user's special attack after being used. But that's also not a big deal because swapping Pokemon in this game is a lot easier, which would get rid of the nerf. And nerfs and buffs don't last forever, which means you could just stall until it wears out. Next up, we have HP draining moves. Moves like Giga Drain, Leech Life, they both do okay damage, while also healing your Pokemon based on the damage they dealt. These moves are so good in a regular playthrough because power points are no longer a thing, which means Pokemon that know one of these moves don't ever have to go to a Poke Center because they can just heal themselves. Up next, we have what are called priority moves in the mainline games. These are moves that make your Pokemon move first on a turn, like Extreme Speed, Aqua Jet, and Bullet Punch. Now obviously, there are no turns in this game, so how could they improve from the mainline games? Well, in Legends CA, they are just casted insanely quick, and there's basically no execution time, so they are very good for either getting in quick or stealing a KO in the online battles. Extreme Speed is also a great move for making the 1000 battles research task go by a lot faster. We all know the iconic move Solar Beam, right? But I bet none of you have actually used it in the mainline games, and for good reason. Using 2 turns for one attack just isn't worth it. However, that's not a problem anymore. The move does have a high casting time, but there's actually a way to fix that problem. If you use Solar Beam as a plus move, its casting time is almost completely gone. Other moves like Hyper Beam that would take a turn to recover are also quite a lot better. Instead of needing a turn to recharge, there's just a short amount of time the Pokemon can't move or act after using it. This is a much better trade-off compared to not being able to act for an entire turn. Next up, we have my personal favorite, moves that give debuffs or buffs. If you're like me, I bet you've never used Tail Whip or Growl in a mainline Pokemon game, because why would you? just doing damage was better. However, now with the combat system rework, if our damage dealing move is on cooldown, we might as well use that move while we wait. Now, debuff moves are only good in the beginning of the game, but moves that give buffs, like Calm Mind and Sword Stance, they make monsters in the online ranked battles. Almost every Pokemon you encounter will be carrying one of these moves, cause you no longer waste a turn using it, and they're pretty safe to use as well. These moves are a must-have online, and if you're not using them, you're simply just missing out. Now, moves that give stat bonuses are great and all, but they're nothing without moves that actually do damage. And in this game, high damage moves have received quite a buff. In the mainline games, Pokemon moves would usually trade off accuracy for higher damage. For example, look at these moves on screen. Why would I use them over other moves with 100% accuracy like these other moves? However, as we already know, accuracy is no longer a thing in Legends CA. They do have a higher cooldown compared to moves that have less damage, but that really isn't a problem if we're just one-shotting everything anyways. This is probably my favorite change to the battle system, as we can now use so many moves that nobody would have ever touched before. This next one might seem a little weird, but I do believe that Protect and Detect got some of the biggest buffs in the game. Protect was already one of the best moves in competitive doubles, but in singles, it didn't see as much play. However, now that combat is reaction based, we can choose what incoming attacks we want to protect against. In competitive ZA, this is a massive advantage, because most Pokemon carry a build like this. One move for a stat buff, one or two moves according to their type, and one coverage move. If I protect the one move that is super effective against me, then I can go attack them without worrying. Detect is also great, but it's a little harder to time in exchange for a lower cooldown. And finally at the top of our list is actually just one move. Dragon Rush. This move has had probably the biggest glow up in the game. It's insane. Dragon Rush went from a move you'd usually never choose over Dragon Claw to now being one of the best moves in the game. Dragon Claw is also great in this game because it has such a low execution time, but Dragon Rush does more damage and it also has iframes, making this a much better option. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.